So hello, everyone. My name is Tamara Hill, creator of LiftOff Your Finances, and I'm so happy that you're with us tonight to talk about the Great Resignation. Joining me tonight is my co-host, Miss Margie McCarthy. Hi, Margie.
Hi, Tamara. Hello, everybody tonight.
Thank you so much for joining. Margie is the founder and owner of McCarthy Messaging, based here in Denver. She specializes in healthcare, corporate communications, and believe it or not, I met Margie, gosh, can you believe this, Margie, 8 years ago in Houston.
I know. I know. Time flies.
So we were working on a project together, and at that time, Margie was a sole proprietor. She was pretty much doing all this work on her own. So when I moved here to Denver, I was just blown away that Margie had grown into a bigger agency with a full staff. And today she has 25 people working for her. And I wanted her to be with us today because Margie, like most business owners, was employed before she became a business owner. So when we talk about the Great Resignation, remember that's what economists are calling this, where so many people are leaving the workforce. And I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, I'm leaving and I'm going to start my own job. And so I thought we have an expert to join us to talk about some of that. So thank you, Margie, for that. Yeah. So I just briefly told you what the Great Resignation is. And I don't know if you feel the same way, Margie, but when you hear about so many people quitting their jobs, don't you think, where are they going?
Yes, I do think that. The term, I guess, surprises me because, just given the craziness of the past couple of years, and the uncertainty of the past couple of years, I don't know many people that are just sort of up and wantonly like quitting their jobs. I've also been in the process of doing some hiring myself, and I'm not having the troubles that I hear a lot of businesses, talk about. So so I kind of take that with a little bit of grain of salt.
I agree with that, because I do feel it in some industries. Like if you go to Starbucks, I know you and I were trying to meet and we couldn't go because they closed Starbucks at real early that day. But I think that, as I continued researching, what is this Great Resignation? I think a definition that I liked was that it is the great reprioritization, which is basically that people are reprioritizing what they're doing. So maybe people are just quitting, but they're reassessing their priorities. In some cases, it leads to resigning from your job. And in other cases, it may lead to what you're doing, starting your own organization and proceeding that way. But nevertheless, if you're at a point where you feel like I'm tired of my job, I just can't do this anymore. We've been there. I'm sure everybody on this call has been there. There's so many options between saying I can't take it anymore and I quit. There's so much that you can do in between there to protect your mental health, preserve your desires, being true to yourself, while also protecting your finances. And so that's the focus of our topic today. So as you know, with LiftOff Your Finances, LiftOff Your Finances is basically transforming your financial picture. And how do you do that? You do that through the Word of God and practical tips. And why do I say it like that? Well, most people do one or the other. They'll say, you know what, I'm going to pray this debt away. And that's good, but you need to do something more than that. Or some people say, I'm going to buckle down, pull my own self up by my bootstraps. I got my list. I'm going to get out of debt. But when you do that, you're leaving out the greatest force in the universe that can help you make that change in your finances and frankly, in your overall life. So Lift Off Your Finances, to sum it up, is biblical principles plus practical tips equals financial transformation. And so we want to stay, we're talking about the Word of God, but we live here in 2022. So we definitely want to share in ways that are meaningful for you to be relevant with the times. So with that said, I want to start with a scripture. This is from Luke chapter 14, verse 28. And this is so relevant for what we're doing tonight. It says, if one of you wanted to build a tower, this is Jesus talking. If one of you wanted to build a tower, wouldn't you first sit down and calculate the cost to determine whether you have enough money to complete it? Now, Jesus was saying this back then. How expensive could things have been? So if he's asking those people at that time, you need to think about the cost and reflect, we should do the same things in our everyday lives with our finances. But in particular, if you're thinking about a career change, this is a perfect scenario that this could apply to, because before you just say, I'm out of here, I quit, you definitely want to reflect and take those steps and think about, what is this going to cost me? Not just financially, what is this going to cost me spiritually? Because wouldn't you agree, Margie, it can be stressful if you don't have your job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love the whole theme of tonight's talk, because I've lived it both ways, where I've planned and then I've made that leap. And then another time where I was particularly in that place of, I can't take it one more day. And I just jumped into the future without a lot of planning, without enough praying. And you're so right. It needs to be that combination of, asking for all that wisdom and guidance, along with, using our God-given brains to plan that move.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you, Margie. And so that's just the perfect transition into, why are people wanting to leave their jobs? And so as we talked about at the top, many people, we've all been through the pandemic together. No one in this age group has been through this level of pandemic. We've heard about polio, and the people who I know who went through that, they were little kids. My grandmother went through polio, so she could understand, similar to how we are now. There was a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. No one knew what was happening. So this is not brand new for us, but this is a new generation. And many people are just like, what am I doing with my life? I can relate to that. That's why I went ahead and really leaned into creating LiftOff Your Finances. I mean, this has been a business concept I've had for a while, but the pandemic really made me think, like many others, if you want to do something, you better go for it, because time is ticking, right? So I just want to share some key tips that you can do. Remember, we said that some call this the great resignation, meaning everybody's just quitting their jobs. And I love the definition that says that this is the great reprioritization. You're reassessing your priorities. And I want to give you some tips again for that. If you're at that point, like Margie and I talked about, like, I can't take it anymore with this job, to kind of help you think through some options before you just pull the cord and quit. So the first thing is, you always want to pray for guidance before and during the process of assessing if you want to leave your job. And Margie talked about this a few minutes ago, but really, if you talk to me, I'll always say to pray. And I don't mean that just like, oh, just pray. I mean it, because when you pray, God is going to give you some wisdom. If you're praying sincerely and from the heart, he hears that and he sees that and he honors that, and he'll give you guidance. And so always start there. But let's look at the options that you have besides just saying, take this job and shove it. You don't have to do that. So the first option is, if you're at your current job, ask yourself, what can happen here that would make it better? And think about that. And that's why I said to pray first. Is it that you want a more flexible schedule? Something where you can work from home or work some days in the office, some days at home, whatever it is. Can you ask for that? Because maybe your job is not horrible, but you just need some flexibility. I would ask before just quitting my job. The other thing is, would it help if you change departments or change work locations? I work in an organization that has locations in 22 states. So maybe you feel like this particular office, when we were pre-pandemic, I had to drive 45 minutes to work. Well, there's one down the street and fewer people are coming in the office. Maybe I can transfer to that location. Would that help meet the need aside from just completely quitting? The other thing is, if for some reason, if it's money, and I say that, you don't hear a lot of people talking about folks asking for raises, but inflation, Margie, you're a business owner, everything is going up. Mm-hmm. As a business, you can attest to that. But if you're in a situation where you need to ask for more money, you need a raise, ask for that. Everything is going up. Housing, groceries, everything. And so that's something to consider. And so the other thing is, if the job is actually a good fit for your lifestyle, and let me explain that. Let's say that you're a busy parent and you work with other parents and you all get that. That might be a good, a job environment for you because you have peers with you. Or what if it's close to your home or a daycare? My sister's in this situation where, the daycare is so convenient to the job that if she ever tried to change jobs, it'd be hard because what am I going to do about that connection? So that's a reason that job is valuable for her. Not the only reason, but it's a reason. Or what if you really like your boss? That's me. I love my boss. That's a reason that I don't want to just jump ship. And then the other thing is, what if you get great training opportunities and good health benefits? all those bigger things besides just how you feel in the moment, like I want to quit. Think about those things and really think about if those things are good, what else can you do outside of work to really supplement your personal happiness? And so, Margie, you may have examples of this too, but when I was going through that, when I used to work in news, what helped me have that personal fulfillment, because there were days where I was like, I'm not answering another phone call. I'm not doing another police report. I'm done for this job. You know, what kept me sane was I took dance classes. And that gave me something to look forward to because the job was good for me, but that gave me a little balance without just saying I'm done. The other option that I experienced personally is that when I worked at a community college, I got tired of that. It got really monotonous, but I stayed there because they were supportive of me going to get my master's degree. So it was just too good of a job to quit with that flexibility. So I was doing makeup as a part-time job, not just because I wanted to have fun. I just I needed extra money and the job I was doing was fun to me. And so that just kind of helped with that balance. So any thoughts about that, Margie?
Yeah, that's such sound advice because it's easy, I think, for the job sometimes to become the lightning rod for everything that's wrong. And I think what you're talking about is sort of balancing that emotional reaction that we all have with our work sometimes, and really taking a step back and thinking a little less emotionally about really sort of the pros and cons, and maybe some of the pros will keep you there, and you can find other ways to make yourself happy. One other practical tip that I might just add is that, sure, like you said, the answer is no, always no until you ask. Ask to work out of an office that's closer to your home, or whether it's to ask for a raise or to change departments. The answer is always no unless you ask. And the practical tip I'd maybe encourage people to think about is when you approach your boss to have that sort of conversation, maybe think in terms of the win-win. Like, I could work out of this location, but maybe I could start a little earlier, or just something like that from the boss's perspective thinks, well, gosh, that could really work out better for both of us. So just a thought there.
Very wise. And as a business owner, I'm sure you've had all kinds of questions like these from your employees.
Yeah. And ultimately, if a boss is wise, you want your people to be happy and to feel well-rounded, and, they can just be more productive when they are. But it always helps if you kind of come with some solutions and think about it from the other person's point of view as well, and come up with a win-win.
Love that. Thank you, Margie. Mm-hmm. So let's say you went through all of this, and I'm spending a lot of time here because a lot of times you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. One thing is wrong, but all these other things are good. You really want to pray and be thoughtful about that. But the main reason why I talk about starting here with seeing what you can work out in your current career is that this will present the least risk to your financial situation, because then you won't disrupt your current PTO schedule or your vacation schedule. You won't disrupt your current pay cycle. You won't disrupt whatever you're doing for retirement. And you also can maintain your healthcare benefits. All of those things are parts of your compensation. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. I think sometimes people just think, oh, I made $50,000 here, I can make it here. But if you're making $50,000 here with no benefits, are you really making the same salary? So you really want to think through all those things. And so that's why I like to spend a lot of time to see what can you do here. And again, both Margie and I are people of faith, and we talk about praying. Even if you had somebody tell you no before, pray. God holds the heart of the king. He holds the heart. He knows the heart of men. He knows our hearts. So he can influence the situation for you. So even if you've asked before, pray about it. Use wisdom like Margie talked about. How can we make this work for the company and myself? And try again before you just say, I'm done, and quit your job. So the next thing I want to talk about is, let's say that you've done all that and ultimately you still want to quit your job. Have you been there before, Margie?
Yes, absolutely.
I have too. So if you're in this situation, what I would say is, if you say, I got to get out of here, as much as you can, try to find another job before you quit your job. Okay. That's the reasons for that are obvious. I mean, I know that you can just feel like I got to get out of here right now, but I guarantee you, unless you're just a millionaire sitting on a bunch of money, you're going to feel that stress pretty quickly when the emotions have worn off and there's not an income coming in. So you really want to think about that. And I say, find that job before you quit, because I meet many well-meaning people who say, this is my plan. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Once this job is out the picture, I'll have the bandwidth and the space to think and do it. And then life happens. You quit your job, you get distracted, or maybe the business doesn't pick up like you initially thought, and then you're in that panic mode. I mean, you're shaking your head, Margie. Can you relate to that?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want to jump ahead, in what you have planned here. But I have a little bit of, I have a tip for bridging that. Mm-hmm. So should I hold until you kind of get to that? Are you going in that direction?
Yep, I'll be there in just a second.
Okay,
so we'll do that. Thank you. So yes, so this is why you really do as much as you can. You want to get a job before you leave your current job. Again, this is the second best way to protect your finances. Remember, the first way is stick with your current job and just change roles or see if you can change some of the circumstances. But if you are going to change jobs, that is a good way to have one before you leave your current one to protect your finances. And I'll tell you why, because some people have saved a lot during the pandemic. We weren't driving, we weren't vacationing, you weren't going to the dry cleaner. So you may have, stashed a little cash and think, well, I can make it for a couple months until I find a job. But the average time to find a job is 3 to 6 months, depending on what you're doing. The more advanced your job, the longer it takes. And so even though there's lots of job opportunities, you just don't know how long it's going to be. And, when I think of an emergency fund, you all hear about that. They advise that you have, 3 to 6 months of expenses. And my definition with LiftOff Your Finances, I say 3 to 6 months of bottom line expenses. And what that is like when I think about 3 to 6 months of expenses, that sounds like a lot of money. But if you have 3 to 6 months of bottom line expenses, that's basically the money it takes to cover your shelter and your transportation. So how much does it cost to keep my mortgage going or pay my rent and utilities? Plus, how much does it cost to pay for my car and insurance, or however you do your transportation? If you can save 3 to 6 months of those expenses, that's to me a much more realistic goal for most people, because that's going to be probably half of what you would normally be saving if you tried to save for everything. And if you can do that, typically you can get some part-time work and unemployment insurance and other things that can supplement the gap. But anyway, I don't mean to digress there, but really the emergency savings fund is for an emergency. And you proactively quitting your job is not necessarily an emergency. It's a self-inflicted emergency. So again, it takes so much time to build an emergency fund that I just caution you not to just automatically say, I'm going to live off my savings, because it took you so long to build that up. The other reason why I advise getting a job before you lose your job is that when I have met with people that I've coached and in my own life, when you don't have a job, how are you supplementing your lifestyle? Credit cards, borrowing funds, accessing your 401k, all those things really in the short term feel good, but in the long term can have effects, disastrous effects or stressful effects. If you're following my website, myliftoff.net, I have several blogs on there about tax season. And I have one that talks about the most common reasons why people owe the IRS, and borrowing from the 401k is one of them. So you just, you can avoid all of that by saying, okay, I am going to leave this job, but I'm going to give myself 3 to 6 months to find a job first before I make that transition. And it'll make your life much, much easier and protect your finances and mental health too. So the other thing is I want to mention about that thought of getting a job before you leave your last one is for anyone who's married in particular. I think a lot of times people think, well, I have a spouse, they can hold it down while I find a job. Oh gosh, but if that job search goes on a long time, what a burden that can be on your partner. So it's not just thinking about yourself. I'm touching on what you said earlier, Margie, about thinking about the win-win. If you're married and have a family, just to quit your job too soon, that can really put a strain on the family.
Yeah, I can just echo that again. Again, this is, like I said, what I bring are all my mistakes to this conversation, as well as things I've learned, and absolutely, I can tell you from real life experience that this can absolutely put an enormous strain on a marriage, and number two, that it's very hard to recover. I should say it's very hard to recover from digging into some of those savings vehicles that you were talking about, Tamara. It's very hard to recover once you raid those, and they're not really meant to be raided for a situation that you can control to some degree. So yeah, I just agreeing and emphasizing to pray for patience as well throughout all of this, the patience to hold on, the patience to build that emergency fund, and patience with your spouse, or asking for that spouse's patience with you as you're going through this tough time to build up.
Thank you. And how long have you been married, Margie?
21 years.
So she's an expert.
Yeah, well, semi-expert, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about option number 3. So you're in a different situation where you do want to resign. You're like, I definitely want to resign, but I want to do something altogether different. And again, the same tips from before apply. You want to look at, is it the right timing? Do I have this other job lined up before I quit? But let's talk about if you're making a difference in career paths. Let's say that you're currently like a corporate sales leader, and now you want to be a high school teacher. That's going to be a big change in your finances. And you may feel passionate, like I've always wanted to teach, but I just felt this pressure to go into this big corporate money-making role, and I'm just going to do the right thing and pursue it. I still say, think about that. So not saying you shouldn't do it, but just take your time. And, the reason why I say that is because I've done that before. And I'll get to my example in a second. But, if you're making a big change like that, think about the timing. We've been talking about that quite a bit, Margie. But let's say that if you're a person who is quitting a corporate career to go teach school, sometimes they only hire it during certain seasons of the year. So you want to know that. You don't want to just quit and find out, oh, they're not hiring until the summer. And then you're just kind of having to wait in that gap. The other thing you want to think about is, what are the financial commitments that you have for the year? So before you quit your good paying job, are you supposed to help pay some college tuition payments for your kid? Are you planning to take a vacation, but you're gonna have to put that off? Do you have some upcoming dental work that you need to take care of? You want to think about all those things so that you time that transition appropriately, especially if there's going to be a dip in your new salary. And then also you want to think about, the benefits that you're going to have, that you'll be leaving. Because when you leave, usually your job will give you cash for the PTO that you didn't use. So if okay, I'm going to resign in July, at least you can stop taking vacations so that when you get that last PTO payment, it's pretty large. It may be several $1,000s. It can kind of give you some more cushion as you make that transition. So you want to think about that. The other thing is, if you have your healthcare benefits, they end, usually it's within 30 days. Will you be eligible for COBRA? And do you have enough money for COBRA? COBRA is basically an insurance opportunity to help you keep your benefits, but you're paying from a full price. So it's usually very, very expensive. So you want to think about that. If you're a person who has healthcare challenges, you're taking regular medications, you want to plan that out so that you're not without insurance, because guess what? Even if you start that new job, sometimes there's a waiting period before those benefits kick in. So these are things you want to consider, like maybe instead of quitting in February, maybe I'll wait till May so I can save some money. I can save up those PTO hours that can cash out for me. There's just so many things that you can do just by doing what Margie said, which is praying and asking for patience and really thinking through that transition. So the other thing I want to mention with that, I'll give you my personal example. I thought I was planning good. I was working at the college. Like I said, it got to be monotonous. And my part-time job was in makeup, and I just loved it. So I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do my passion. I'm going to quit my job. Margie, I know most of the people on here personally, and they probably don't know this story, but I said, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit the college and go work full time in makeup. But it was in retail. And oh my gosh, I hated it. It was so much. And what I didn't calculate was, remember how I talked about salaries? I was like, oh, the salary is the same, but it wasn't. What I didn't factor in is that when I was working at the college, even though I was making $40,000 a year, I could teach part-time classes. So that was extra money. And then I was working the part-time makeup job. So really my salary was $50,000. But all I heard was $42,000. So when I started working there, it was like, oh my gosh, they said you can't teach anymore. And then of course I wasn't working part-time. That was the full-time job. So I lost that part-time income. And with me being salaried, I was working a lot more than 40 hours a week, because you know how retail is, especially during the holidays. So I was losing money, even though on paper it said you made $42,000 at the college and you will make $42,000 as a retail manager. So you just really want to look at it. And I think, Margie, what threw me off with that is that further, and I like to tell people this, when they first paid me, it was hourly. So $20 an hour sounds like that's pretty good money. But I hear people all the time tell me, I would not work for anything less than $40,000. I'm like, well, have you done the math on what $20 an hour is? It's about $41,000.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I agree. You've got to look at the big picture, and you gotta do some math too, to really figure out, am I ahead? Am I behind? And all these little things that you may forget about.
Absolutely. So again, don't want to discourage anyone from changing careers, but the beauty of it, if you're already working, you don't have to put that pressure on yourself to just quit. You can plan these things out. You can look at the money, build that cushion, and then that way you can say, hey, I waited 6 months, I saved extra, I accounted for these expenses, and then you can make that move a little more comfortably without jeopardizing your finances. And so the last thing is about starting your own business. And so I mentioned to you at the beginning that Margie McCarthy owns McCarthy Messaging here in Denver, a communications firm with 25 employees, and her employees are all across the nation now that we're in this remote work environment. I think they always have been, right? You've always had that flexibility.
Yeah.
And so what I want to talk to Margie about now is kind of for those who want to say, I'm done working for somebody, I want to start my own business. And she said she has examples from doing it the right way and the more stressful way. Before you start, Margie, I want to share a quote from another person who I respect very greatly, who is a pastor, but also has been a business owner. And he said, you don't start a business just to make money. You start a business to replace a job. And I had to think about that. But what he was saying is that you don't just quit. If this business you're starting is not going to ultimately replace what you're doing, like the income, the benefits at that same level, you don't need to just pull the plug. He's like, people think I'm going to make all this money, but it takes so much time to build a business. And I'm learning that right now, even with LiftOff Your Finances. So just welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take time to build, but I think that the spirit of your session here tonight, Tamara, is I'm in agreement with it. It's not to discourage anybody. It's to say, have patience, do some planning, and then do this the right way. And yeah, so I would say the right way, or an example of some tips on how to do it the right way is so an example of one time when I was considering going back out on my own, but I had to kind of, cushion myself there. And what I started doing is and I would encourage you to do, you all to do, is maybe reaching back out to just other people in your network of people that maybe it's, previous bosses or previous companies that you've worked for, and just, maybe asking the question, would you need any help on sort of a contract basis? They might be willing to, to work something out with you. And there's an advantage in that, because you already know their business. You already probably know the job. And so for an employer, that could be an attractive option, and you might be able to fill, a shortage that they currently have on their staff. So reaching back out to your network is one thing. And then this, you really do have, this is maybe once you've built up sort of enough people that can, where you feel like, all right, I have enough set up that I might be able to sort of make this transition. You might, as you were leaving your job and expressing, to your boss how much you loved it and so forth, you might even ask if they might want you to do some contract work, again, since you know the job, the role, the company, that could be a possibility. And then, you've made that former, company of yours a potential new client, again, just to kind of bridge your world, to the future.
I love that tip. It's like you're kind of putting your landing pad in place before you jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so, very much so. And yeah, don't discount the people you already know is what I'm saying. And that can be, like I said, people you previously worked with, friends, family. If you can let them know about your plans and be sort of specific so that they can remember and keep you in mind, of what you're looking for, what you're trying to do. People love to help. So yeah, don't discount the people around you that can help you make that leap.
Wonderful. And not to be awkward, can you share with us some tips from when you didn't take such a cautious?
Oh, yes, it's painful. I will share. So it was one of those situations just like you talked about. And so I decided at this kind of like pseudo midlife crisis moment that I was also just tired of what I'd been doing, for 20 some years. And I wanted to go into something completely different. So I went from a PR and communications job into developing my own little girls' clothing line.
Okay.
Totally different kind of business. And I think I maybe over-relied on, God will help me make this happen, which of course he will if you ask for guidance and you ask for guidance, have patience and plan. Use those God-given brains, that he gave me. But so anyway, I think I probably didn't do enough of that. And back to some of your earlier points, I think if you are going into something that's totally different from what you've done before, try to talk to other people in that industry. I think I did that, but maybe a key question I could have asked is, what don't I know here? What could be the three biggest mistakes, that would lead to failure in this business? So yeah, so that's something I would suggest. And then yeah, so I think God, expects us to do our part, while we're, praying to him, to be both wise and prayerful. So I think that's what I did wrong there. And I did not have patience in that instance. And I didn't build the landing pad so that I could make my leap. And I ended up pilfering part of my 401k, which takes forever to build back. So don't do that, ladies.
Well, thank you. And see, this is a living example of, I mentioned this earlier, if you joined the call a little bit later, is that you want to think through these things, as most people will use the 401k or emergency savings. And there's so many implications with that. We're in tax season. I have lots of resources about that on my website, myliftoff.net, that you have to really think through that, because when you pull down those 401k funds, you're almost double taxed. You're penalized for getting it early, and then you're taxed on the back end. So you're right. There are ways to get around that, to still pursue it. But I love, Margie, that you talked about the message of grace. God gave you grace. You obviously have recovered. You're now in a successful business model. But I like what you're saying, that we can always use the wisdom that God gives us along with that grace.
Absolutely. And to ask him to walk through this journey, with us at our side. That is probably the number one difference, I would say, between my failure experience and my more successful experiences, because I think that if I had really, clung to him, I would have gotten more wisdom than I did.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, we have shared our points. We want to hear from you. So if you have questions, I'm going to try to get this to where you all can be on camera again and you can ask questions. All right. So if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself. You see me up there again. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. Is anyone able to unmute themselves, or do we have y'all locked on mute? Let's see. Sharon Hill, can you unmute and ask a question just so we know that the microphones are working? Maybe the microphones are locked. Let's see.
No.
Hey, Tam.
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
there she is. Okay.
Okay.
So does anyone have a question for us or comment?
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I feel really good. Hey, Tam.
Hi.
Hey, Miss Margie.
Hi
Hey,
there.
everybody. I feel really good because I feel like I have structured myself to actually meet all the things that you guys have discussed. I feel like I started out really early and got the clarity from the church on how to utilize my finances, how to save money. Right now, I'm at a point in my life, and my husband as well, Anthony Johnson, he's listening in. But we're at a point in our lives right now where we're at the tail end of trying to start a business. So it's just a matter of trying to decide what business we're wanting to start. We're dabbling in real estate, and we know that that's a great arena. And other things will come up, and I think, oh, well, that's a great idea too. So right now, that's just kind of where we are. But it's really comforting to hear all the things that you guys have spoken about, and I've kind of patterned myself already in that on that course. So it's really comforting to hear that we're kind of been doing it right all this time.
That is music to my ears because it's a lot. And Margie, any thoughts there?
No, just my hats off, to you and your husband. And I guess the one question I would ask, and sounds like you've already thought of this, but in any of these businesses that you're considering going into, have you really tried to reach out and meet and learn from people who are, already have a business in that particular field or industry?
It changes like the wind, to be honest with you. We thought about a barbecue business, which his dad has done very well in. It's like very successful in the Oak Cliff area here in Texas. Then we changed that up and said, well, that's going to require a lot of time, a lot of energy. Here we are in our 50s. Can we really devote ourselves to that? So then it changed, but having real estate properties to lease out, that to me and my husband feels like it's the best way to go, but now you kind of have a setback because where you live in Dallas is not a whole lot of reasonable land and things like that. So, but we do have people that we can talk to about real estate. It's just me with the other ideas that I have in my mind that I would need to reach out to other people and get more information on and just kind of learn that way.
Yeah, and I would say you're being very realistic because a former business coach of mine taught me that, all we have to work with as entrepreneurs is time, money, and energy. And it is a reality, you know, when you're young, you have you're rich in time, but poor in money, and, you know, rich in energy. And as we age, those things switch around. So especially your comment about the, you know, getting into the food business and so forth, you guys seem like you're being really thoughtful, and that is a very smart and, you know, reality to take into consideration.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vicki. Are there any other questions this evening?
When is your next event, Tamara?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I'll tell Margie, since we're all family here, Vicki and Sharon are my aunts.
Oh, I love it. Wonderful. Oh.
So
Vicki was in disguise. Sharon, I could figure out with the last name.
So thank you so much for asking that question, because we Lift Off Your Finances. I created this business in 2017. It's actually, my business is called Try Life Media, and Lift Off Your Finances is one of my brands. And it took a while to get going. And I talked to Margie about this. Margie, can you believe last January, I told you, I'm going to really expand Lift Off Your Finances. I'm going to do these conferences, and I'm going to do a TV show, and all this stuff. And by the grace of God, it worked out. But my first Lift Off Your Finances conference, the live event, was here in Denver in November. It was very well attended, half-day conference. And so then after that, I had one last month at the House of Purpose, Denver. And the House of Purpose is a different type of church. It's more of a church that has a mission to help people who are transitioning from homelessness or other at-risk situations. And oh my gosh, you talk about the support there. They shared all kinds of flyers and promotions for this event. People came out. We had a great brunch that the church sponsored. And it was just a wonderful time. I got a lot of great feedback from them as well. So my next live event, I'm right now actively looking for churches in the Denver area, or for those of you in Texas, if you would like me to come, I'm welcome to come. It doesn't cost you anything, your church, besides being able to provide the space. And I have the materials and the workshop information that you'll need. So I don't have a calendar date yet, Sharon, for when my next event is. But whenever I have another webinar like this, you know, this is kind of a matter of signing up people, not necessarily having a venue. I will certainly let you know. And so my next one, I'll announce it in my next newsletter. That'll be probably in April.
Okay. Well, I signed up for your newsletter, so I'll get it then.
Yes, you will. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'll go ahead and share a little bit of information. I'm a person that I'm very crafty. And so, at a very, very young age, I started being interested in sewing and crocheting and making things with my hands. So I can't tell you how many years back, but my son was pretty young. I want to say maybe 9 or 10. I was a single mom, owning a house and paying a mortgage, car note, all of that. And I began. Well, it started as a hobby, making wreaths, door wreaths, and I had like several people say, you know, why don't you sell these? You know, and so somewhere there along the way, I got the idea to do it, and I started taking orders from people and just started a small business. And it has never gotten to be anything that that took over other jobs or anything in my life. It's always been like what they call now a side hustle. So, and it still is, you know, I haven't done anything in the last 3 years with reefs, but it's just because I don't have the space right now. But when that opens up for me, I'll just start doing it all over again. And um, I just want to say to that whatever it is that you do in life, you need to have a passion for it. So, you know, if somebody's thinking about starting a business or just a side hustle or whatever it is, make it be something that you love, something that you enjoy doing. And so I always look forward to going back to that because I know that's something I enjoy doing. So, and it always, supplemented my income. It was always around Christmas time. And, I'd make about $1,200 a year. And that was great because I could buy whatever my child wanted for Christmas and whatever I wanted for Christmas. And, yeah, so it would always get me over the Christmas hump. So
love
that's
that.
just sometimes you might not ever want that to be a replacement of what you already do, but that's something on the side that you can always lean on when you have time to do it. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Sharon, because that goes with our first point that, sometimes when you're burnt out on your job, having that side hustle that you love is enough to say, okay, I'm working this 8 to 5, but I know this weekend I'm going to be doing my passion project. And so I
Right.
see, yeah, so thank you for sharing. I see Daryl Hill. Hi.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, handsome.
Hey, well, I did have a question
Okay.
to Mrs. Hill and Mrs. McCarthy. What is the easiest way to find a business coach, and should I pay for the coaching?
Okay, I'll let Margie start with that one.
Yes. And first I want to know, is this your handsome brother or your handsome uncle?
My handsome brother.
Nice to meet you, Daryl.
It's nice to meet you too.
Gosh, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Tamara, but yeah, no, back to your serious question of a business coach. Well, here's so a good free way, to start, I think, with a business coach is called SCORE. It's the it's an acronym through the Small Business Administration, and basically it's retired executives who have some spare time and they're willing to coach people who are trying to build their own businesses. So to me, that would be probably the first place I would look for some no cost, support, and could be really great support. I think there's a way to look up coaches in your area if you really want that face-to-face. There's a way to look up people in your industry. In fact, I did that when I started the little girls clothing line that I had for a while. I looked up on SCORE, someone else who had been in the apparel industry. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then, maybe as the business grows, like, I'm in a place now where I'm wanting to grow quite a bit. So it was a hard pill to swallow, but I am working with a business coach, that they can charge quite a bit. And so I bit the bullet, decided to do this, and we'll see how it goes, but I wouldn't recommend that just starting out. I'd try looking up SCORE, which is associated with Small Business Administration.
Okay.
And I found it. It's SCORE.org. So just like football scores, SCORE.org. And we can put that in the chat too. I have an answer for that too, Daryl. This is what helped me in Colorado. Every state has its own small business administration office, just like Margie mentioned. So there is one in Texas. Early on, when I started my business in 2017, I connected with that. And they have all kinds of workshops. Like if you're in the technical field, if you're in the medical field, if you're into catering, they have different specialty groups. And so the Small Business Administration, they have coaching. They can help you do a free financial plan. They also have really nice conferences. The one out here, they have a lot of conferences targeted to women business owners. And so I've been there, and this is what's exciting about that. Did you know that my business, Try Life Media, is an award-winning business? Because they gave me a scholarship 2 years in a row. And my attorney who I was working with said, that's an award-winning business. I'm an award-winning business.
Absolutely.
So, look up your small business association for your state. They're connected to the Federal Small Business Administration, and you'll find resources like the coaches and what Margie mentioned. I also agree with her, Daryl, to start free like that, because she's right. Those executive coaches, I had one through work, and I think that person was like $800 an hour. So
Wow.
I say kind of go the free work first, and then, progress as you need to.
Okay.
Great question.
I have one more tip along those lines. I kind of sort of related, and that is one other thing to forego when you've got a very early stage business is some people get all caught up in marketing, meaning flashy stuff, or I need a really fabulous looking website, or I need business cards or a logo that's absolutely the best. And you can maybe indulge in some of that later. But marketing is, you can sink a lot of money into that needlessly. Not
Yeah.
just, you don't need to promote your business in some ways, but the more cost-effective way is to start with your network, family, friends, former colleagues, to get the word out about what you're trying to do. Much more cost-effective than sinking all your money into the flashy stuff.
Okay.
Wonderful.
There's so much media out there now. You've got LinkedIn, you got Facebook, you got TikTok, you got what's the other one?
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram. So use those free platforms that you already have access to start your business. And then the other thing that really helped me in everything I have done, it has been personal referrals. More than anything, people ask, "Oh my God, where did you get that? Oh my God, who made that?" And so, yeah, I got so many referrals from people saying, "So and so gave me your phone number and she has wreath on her door, blah, 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 blah." And I
Nice.
wanted to mention too, don't ever be afraid to pivot when you need to. If the business is not working and you see you need to go in a different direction, don't be afraid to do it. Last year, no, not last year, in 2020, I made almost $5,000 selling masks.
Wow.
Okay. And so I pivoted from making wreaths to making masks. And
Okay.
then I also did a lot of stuff with the Cricut machine. I went out and purchased the Cricut machine. So I'm still in my lane. I'm still in my field. I'm still doing crafting. I'm doing things that I love. But I was like, okay, I can't do wreaths. I don't have the space. What else can I do? And immediately, oh, I got a sewing machine. I can go back to sewing again. So don't ever be afraid to pivot to that next thing, because it just opens up all kinds of new opportunities.
I love that. Did you have a comment, Margie?
Yes,
And
I
then we have a
do.
question too. From
Okay,
Adrian. Go ahead.
yes. I was about to jump out of my shoes with that comment, because there's so much truth in it. One of the other hard lessons that I learned is that, and a lot of people coming out of corporate jobs think, oh, I need a business plan and it needs to be, 30 pages long and it needs to have every possible contingency. That is nonsense and non-reality. For a small business owner, you need to probably have, a 2-page plan, that you thought through and so forth. But it's more about getting things in motion. And once things are in motion, just like you were saying, Sharon, you begin to see what's working and what's not, and how can I tweak it and so forth. And you can't anticipate all that. So, and it's not really worth the investment of your time to do that. So have a plan, and then the way you perfect that plan and perfect the business is to take steps and reflect and regroup and then take more steps. So it's incremental.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you. And we have a hand raised from Anthony Johnson.
Hi, good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you
Hi.
are, I guess. Thank you for having this and for inviting us. This has been very informative.
Anthony, can you lean in a little closer to your microphone?
I'm sorry, hold on just a moment. I can do that.
Okay,
Is that better?
perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you for letting me know that. I agree with you, Mrs. McCarthy. I think first, probably what I'm saying is more of a comment than question. The 30-page business plan is not my strength, but I did find what's called a one-page business plan online, and that seemed to fit kind of what I wanted to do. And along with what you're saying, I'm a person that believes in simplicity. And so the one thing I've learned here recently in discussing things with my wife is we use kind of what you've talked about. It's called the 5 C's, and it's clarity, contextualization, collaboration, cost, and of course, what you started out with being Christ-centered. So
Yes.
I think with all of that combined, and you've all mentioned that, I'm just kind of putting it in a different format. You know, it just simplifies things for me along with that one-page business plan. And as Ms. Sharon said, that's contextualization. When you're able to pivot, you're still doing what you want to do. You're just doing something that fits into your bigger picture. So, you know, I think that's important, you know, as you start to look at what you're doing and what direction that you want to go. So thank you for allowing me to comment.
Oh, thank you. And that's just so wonderful. And that's just the perfect tie to all of this. Remember, Lift Off Your Finances. The whole concept is based on biblical principles plus practical tips equal financial transformation. You want to use both of those resources. You know, we want the word of God, we want his wisdom, but then we also want to do our part and take those well thought out steps. I mean, even with my business, I didn't do the 30-page business plan either. And the marketing, I do the same thing as Margie professionally. So that came a little bit easier for me just because that's what we do every day is marketing, that kind of thing. But I just want to thank you for this time, for all of you taking time to join us tonight. I do want to close us out in prayer and give you a quick reminder before we close. So Father, in the name of Jesus, thank you so much for this time together. Thank you for blessing us to hear wisdom through Margie, through the participants, through myself. And I just pray, Lord, that you continue to navigate this pandemic ahead of us. You've already gone before us. You know what we're going to need tomorrow. You know what we're going to need 50 years from now. And so, God, we just thank you for giving us that comfort. And I pray that if anyone is feeling uncertain, doesn't have that relationship with you, I just pray that they will connect with you, just ask you into their hearts to be their Lord and Savior. And so, Lord, I just pray that you'll bless everyone this week and continue to give us wisdom on how to move forward in this season and forever. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So, yeah, thank you again, Margie. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again in person soon. And all of my family and friends, thank you for joining. I want to remind you to check out the website, myliftoff.net. We do update it all the time with new resources. I also offer personal coaching, and I've had several people sign up for that, and that helps. And we also have a new donations page. You know, the coaching helps finance some of these things, but donations, any donations you make, whether you help sponsor a live event or just help sponsor some of the programming that we're doing, is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for your time and have a good evening.
Thank
Night.
you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Smooches. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. I'll stop the recording, Margie.
Sure.
All right. Well, Margie, thank you so much for everything. I'm going to stop this recording.
Yeah, you